Welcome to the Recovery Toolkit podcast. I'm Richie. I'm going to be your host. Throughout the series, we're going to talk to a range of different people who will give you tools and tips to help manage your recovery. The podcast itself is being brought to you by Epic Restart Foundation, who are a national charity who support people to rebuild a positive life after gambling harm. So this week on the Recovery Toolkit podcast, I'm joined by Nathan, and I often say I'm excited to do a podcast, so I'm not going to say that today, although I am very excited. Nathan, you were one of the figures in my very early days that I looked up to, and I was always told, find somebody who's a little bit ahead, and then follow what they do, and if it looks like they're doing all right, do what they do. And that was probably one of the best bits of advice I'd got, because when I first come in, I was looking at somebody who was 10 years clean and sober, and I was going, I'll never do that. But when I looked at you, you were like a few months ahead of us, and I was like, oh, well, I can potentially do that. So you probably don't know how big of a role you played in my recovery, so thank you for that. And now that I get to grill you, I want to say, on the podcast, I'm buzzing about it, if I'm honest. And out of that, I think the reason I'm buzzing is because what I see in your life now, I think would offer hope, inspiration, an opportunity for anybody getting into recovery. And that's what this is all about for me. It's about how do we show that there's a new life? How do we show that there's new opportunity? How do we show that actually it doesn't matter where you are now, but if you do a bit of work, you can get better. So I've bigged you up. I've raised the anticipation for everybody that's listening. So, yeah, big shoes to fill, Nathan. Tell us a little bit about Nathan and how you come to be in recovery and what life looked like for you. Keep it short.
Thanks, Richie. So recovery, how did I get to recovery? I was drinking and using for many years and very lost. I started drinking when I was quite young, and I started working when I was quite young as well. I started working as a chef when I was about 18, 19. And then after about 4 or 5 years, I got a job working in the music industry, and I did that for about 10 years. And on the outside looking in, I had an amazing job. I was working with some of the biggest music names and touring all around the world, but ultimately I was on the outside looking in. On the inside looking out, I was just so lost. I was the party never ended for me. I would go on these like tours, big tours, and be living on a tour bus and living in hotels and touring venues, and ultimately I was just so lost. The tour would finish and my party would continue, and I just drank and used all the time, and until it became a massive problem, and but I wasn't willing to do anything about it.
Yeah, and I think what you say there, being going all over the world, that might sound like a dream job for people being involved in the music industry, but identity, I imagine you would struggle with, because you were never in the same place for very long. So you couldn't attach yourself to social circles, you couldn't attach yourself to friendship groups, and I would imagine it was quite isolating for you.
It was isolating in a sense, but the people I was touring with, I worked with the same team for probably about 3 years, the same team of people in the kitchen. We had like 3 chefs and 3 front of house, and but it wasn't friendship. We used together, we drank together, we partied together, we toured together. And then when the tour would finish, you'd have like a 2-month, 3-month, 4-month gap. And I would just carry on partying. It got to a point where I went from like, doing really, really big tours and working with some really amazing people to doing a lot lesser jobs, and I was just totally lost. I was completely lost. At the height of my career, outside looking in, it looked amazing. The end of my career was me in a 1-bedroom apartment, not far away from here, trying to kill myself because I couldn't deal with me anymore. couldn't deal with being in addiction, couldn't deal with not having anyone. I've always had a very loving family. Like my mum and my brothers loved me always, but I was just so lost, and suicide looked like the best way out for me.
And that's important for people here, because sometimes that's where it takes you, isn't it? It's
100%. I mean, suicide for me, like I have many suicide attempts, like on my medical record, if anything. A lot of them weren't suicide attempts. A lot of them were cries for help.
Yeah.
I've had many overdoses all over the country, and a lot of them were cries for help. A lot of them were, I needed attention. So I found attention with ambulances and hospitals, but the last one wasn't. The last one was an attempt on my life, because there was no way out for me.
Yeah.
That was the end of my drinking.
And from that moment, what changed?
It was the morning after when I woke up in the flat, that became my sobriety date. And I don't know what happened. I just know that morning I woke up and I said, my name's Nathan Pollard, and I'm an alcoholic. And I signed it on a piece of paper. I wrote it down on a piece of paper. I said, I'm an alcoholic, and I signed it. And that became the start of this journey that I'm on now. A few days later, I found myself at a meeting, an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And I went to that meeting, and I got hope. I got hope. A lady shared at my first meeting. I didn't know anything. I'd been to Alcoholics Anonymous for a few years, but I'd never stopped drinking. I went for the wrong reasons, to say. I went to get people off my back. I went to keep a job. I went to impress family. But this time I didn't. This time I went, and I hadn't had a drink for 4 days. I hadn't used for 4 days. And I heard a lady share, and I got a massive amount of hope.
Yeah, and I love that word. Hope and inspiration are the two things that anybody that ever listens to this podcast, I hope that's what at least one person gets out of any podcast that we do, of any bit of content we put out. Hope and inspiration that there's another way, and recovery is possible. And from that moment when you walked into AA, like I said earlier, you were one of them people that was a little bit further ahead than me, and I've shared a lot that people say do 90 meetings in 90 days. I was one of them addicts who was like, well, if that's what people are saying do, I'm going to do more than that. You were similar, Nathan, weren't you?
Yeah, I was similar. But when I arrived in Alcoholics Anonymous, I was unemployable. I couldn't hold a job down. I'd been fired from my last, 5 or 6 jobs. So I was broken, Richie. I was broken, and I needed. I always shared it in the early days, because it's true at the time. It's true today, I didn't know what I wanted. I just didn't want what I had, and that's true. I didn't want what I had. My life was a mess, but I also didn't want to die. And I came to AA, and someone suggested to me. It was my first meeting. I can remember the guy who suggested it. He said, "Do 90 meetings in 90 days." And at the time, I thought, like a meeting every day for 3 months. But the next day that day I went to 2 meetings. I went to another one straight away. And then the Friday I went to 3. And the Saturday I went to 4. The Sunday I went to 2. And I did. I went to loads of meetings. I went to 184 meetings in the first 90 days. Became addicted to Alcoholics Anonymous, but I wasn't drinking. I wasn't using. And it worked for me.
Yeah.
It worked for me. The next 90 days I went to 264 meetings. It was the only place I could go.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people don't get, isn't it? I think Alcoholics Anonymous, any 12-step fellowship meeting, you're safe, aren't you? Yeah. For the period of time that you're in that room, you're safe. And sometimes that's all you have to be. Yeah. Is safe. If I'm safe and I'm not using, I'm doing all right. Yeah. Especially in the early days when the compulsion to use and drink and stuff's still there. Yeah. But actually by going to them meetings, it provided you with so much positivity, of being around people that are on a similar journey, new connections, new relationships, new people to chase or aspire to be. And then also you're in their meetings for, you're seeing 2 or 3, sometimes 4 a day. That's potentially up to I don't know, 8 hours a day. You surrounded yourself with people that were good for you at that time.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, for me, it wasn't just the meetings. It was very much like, you could go to I'd moved back in with my mum when I surrendered. I moved back with my mum, and I stayed with my mum for first 18 months of this journey. And, I'd leave the house and I'd get the bus and I'd go to a meeting, and then you'd have fellowship in between the meetings. So you'd hang out, go for a coffee with someone, which was all very new for me, sober talking, being with people that you don't really know, but then you build that friendship, you get to know each other, and then you go to another meeting, and then you go to another meeting, and you go home and have some tea, and then you go to another meeting. It fulfilled the day for me.
Yeah, and that's important, isn't it? I think some of the things that I see people in early recovery when they're struggling is when they've got time on their hands.
Yeah.
How do you get out your own head? And I think by occupying your time, whether that be with a coffee, with even just traveling to and from the meeting, being in the meeting, they're all positive ways of filling your time in those early days.
Yeah.
What was the biggest thing that you took from being around other people? So surrounding yourself with other people in recovery, other people in AA, what did you get from them people in them early days?
For me in the early days, I believed them. Like there was so many things that happened when I got sober that I never realized before. It just happened. Like I get to know people and I believe their story and I identified with their story. I didn't know what the word identified meant when I got sober. But the first meeting I went to and I heard that lady share, I identified with everything she said. I did think I would never be able to say any of that myself, but so it became, I've heard it many times that you find your tribe, and I found people who were just like me. Yeah, they might be 10 years sober or 15 years sober, but at the time I was a month sober. I collected my month chip, and they're collecting their chips, and you feel part of something. And that's what I felt. That was part of the hope for me. I felt part of something.
Yeah. When you say collecting a chip, there might be people listening to this who go, well, what's a chip? What's that all about? Tell us a little bit about how that works.
So the chip for me was huge. So, when I arrived in AA, they gave you a chip when you're 24 hours sober. And I held on to that chip. It was like the most important thing in the world. Then I got to a month sober and you get a chip. They give them out. And this is like a little tiny 80p coin. But I held on to it like it was the biggest thing in the world. And then you look forward to, a day at a time, picking up your next chip. And it's being part of like this growing community that, you're in recovery and you're getting these chips. And I love those chips, it was everything, I look back on my early recovery and I learned so much in that first year, for 2 years maybe. But a big part of that came with a sponsor. I asked someone to sponsor me. Didn't know what a sponsor was. I didn't know what it was all about. I'd had a sponsor when I was trying AA, but the relationship never went further than me asking him to sponsor me, him give me his phone number, and that's where it ended. And when I came in this time, I asked someone to sponsor me and asked for their help, and he said yeah, and that moment of him saying yeah built this recovery for me.
Yeah, sponsor. Tell us about that.
Sponsor. So the advice I was given, or the suggestion is, everything's suggested, was find someone that you identify within the room and out the room. So I'm a chef. There was a chef in the room, and he'd been sober for a little while, and I liked what he said, and he had a life that I wanted. So I asked him if he'd sponsor me, and he said yeah.
Yeah, and the most important bit that you said there for me was he had something I wanted.
Yeah.
How important is that?
That's massive. That when I came into AA, I didn't want my life. Like I hated my life. I hated me. I hated everyone around me. So it was very attractive to me to see someone who was sober, who looked like they were happy. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be happy. I wanted a smile. I looked very different when I turned up at AA. Like my life is so different today than it was then. and I can't forget that, you know.
Yeah. Do you still have the same sponsor now?
No, I don't. So I changed sponsors after about 4 years, and that wasn't anything against my first sponsor. You know, he's a good friend, and I love him dearly. But I felt like I wanted more, and so I changed sponsors. At 4 years sober, I changed sponsors, and I have the same sponsor now, and I see him every couple of weeks, and I talk to him whenever I need him, and that's it for me. You know, that's a massive part of my recovery, is to have someone who I can go to and tell everything to.
What the bit about that you say, and I hope this is the message that comes out of it, is it's okay to move on to the next thing. It's okay to do something different. It's okay to get a new sponsor. 100%. You know, because at different points in your recovery, it's okay to go and find the next thing, the new thing, the next person, the other bit of support, the other bit of help.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I'm taking from that is, you know, you got to a certain point, and you got to that point because of that sponsor's support and help.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, actually, I maybe just want to try something a little bit different. Having the courage to do that isn't easy though, is it?
No, 100%. But it's like anything. You know, I was about 9 months sober, and I got a job working in a dry cafe, and I thought at the time, this will be me for the rest of my life, because I honestly thought when I got sober I would never cook again. Now, hang me knives up, that's it, I'll never cook again, because that environment, you know, it's very much fueled with, you know, drinking, drugging. So I thought I'd never cook again. And then when I was about 9 months sober, I got a job in a dry bar, and I loved it. And that was a stepping stone from working all my life to then being on benefits, and then coming off benefits and getting a job at a dry bar, safe bar. I worked there for 2.5 years, and I thought I would never leave there. But I did. I did leave there. You know, I did. I not outgrowed it, but it was like COVID happened, and then I got a job somewhere else, and that didn't work out. I only worked there for 3 months. But that didn't work out, and that's okay. That was another stepping stone to the job I'm in now, and I love my job now.
Yeah, I honestly, I can remember clear as day, the day that opened, and the spare ribs.
Yeah.
They were special then. You know, I can still taste them when I talk about them, I think, sometimes. And the other thing that, Nathan, you are always be known to my mum as the guy who makes carrot cake.
Yeah.
Because the carrot cakes you make are quite special as well, aren't they?
Yeah. So, I mean, it would be nice to say it was my recipe, but it's not. You know, that's the truth. You know, I think the great thing in my job, you know, I've been cooking for quite a few years, and any recipe that I've probably got it of someone else. You know, like when I first started cooking when I was 18, I worked with some amazing chefs, but I was a sponge, Richie. You know, people say self-taught. I'm not self-taught. I've learned from other people. You know, self-taught for me is not. For me, it's not real. You know, I'll work with an amazing chef, and I'll ask him, can I borrow your recipes, and then use them and like tweak them. But that carrot cake recipe is not mine. You know, I've used it for about 20 years, but it's not mine, you know.
But that's okay.
That's okay, yeah.
That's okay. But where in life do you need to reinvent the wheel anyway?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And what you're seeing, what you said early on is, I looked for somebody that had something that I wanted.
Yeah.
And that's who I attached myself to. And I think that's important, isn't it? The carrot cake recipe was something you wanted, so you asked to use it, you got support and you got help.
Yeah.
Recovery's the same.
Yeah.
Recovery's exactly the same. I believe recovery's exactly the same. Look out there, see who's doing the things that you want to do, and ask them, how do you do it? Can you help me do it?
Yeah.
And if you have the courage to ask them things, I think you've got a chance.
Yeah.
So when you go it alone, it becomes difficult, doesn't it? How hard would it be for you to make that carrot cake from scratch without having any recipe whatsoever?
Yeah, I mean, ridiculous. I can look at a picture of a carrot cake now and tell you what temperature it's baked at, because I've been cooking a long time, you know, but that recipe is, I mean, I've given that recipe to hundreds of people, you know. Why not? Share it, you know. Yeah. It's not mine.
Yeah. No, and that's recovery. Give the gift of recovery. Give the gift of what's helped you. You're sitting here today, you know, hundreds of people will listen to this they're going to get the gift of Nathan's recovery.
Yeah.
And hopefully they might go, I'm going to try a bit of that. That's worked for him. I want to try a bit of that. And that's what this is about, you know. And I love the fact that you've given the carrot cake recipe to hundreds of people, but now you're giving the gift of time and your journey and your story.
I think the time, that's the most important thing you can give someone. I think like Alcoholics Anonymous gave me time. My first sponsor gave me time. He listened. That's the biggest thing you can give someone is time. You know, and I help people now and people say, will you help me? Yeah, I'll give you time. Talk, listen. You know, that's it. People give you time.
I think we talk about that a lot is everybody talks about, oh, go and talk to somebody, go and speak, you know, like reach out, ask for help. All them things are perfectly fine. If you can't find someone who can listen, you're struggling, aren't you? How important is it that actually the person you find has the ability to listen?
100%. It's huge, you know, like my sponsor, you know, I rang him up a few days ago, and it's not the big things for me. It's the tiny things that'll tip me over. Like I can handle the big things. It's the teeny little things. So I rang him up and this is what's going on. And he just listens. And then that's it. There's no do this, do that, do this. Sometimes you just need to talk. You need to get it out, you know. The importance of having a sponsor for me is everything. You know, without a sponsor, I don't have that person I can talk to.
Yeah, and that's something that grows and changes as you move through your recovery. When I look at Nathan now, I see a completely different... I see the same person, but you have so many other things going on in your life now. So going from doing 180 odd meetings in your first 90 days to 260 odd meetings because that's all you knew.
Yeah.
What does your life look like now?
So life today life's amazing, Richie. You know, you can't take the smile off my face. You know, I have I'm still an alcoholic. I'm still a drug addict. You know, but I wear that like openly. You know, the end of my drinking, everyone knew that I had a massive problem. I didn't. You know, or maybe I did and wasn't willing to admit it. So I wear it like a badge of honor. You know, I'm very open about me. But I'm not just a drug addict and an alcoholic anymore. You know, I'm in recovery. I'm also a father today. I have a daughter who's a teenager now. I have my fiance. We're getting married in 8 weeks. You know, I have a job. I have a loving family. I have, you know, these are all things that, like, on the outside looking in, when I got sober, I would find very boring. You couldn't buy this off me. Like, you couldn't take this off me. You know, like, my life today is amazing, Richie. Like, amazing. You know, I'm going for surgery later on this year, and I'm kind of looking forward to it. And that's mad, you know. Like, I found out that I need a hip replacement. And at first, it was like, oh, a hip replacement. But now it's like exciting. You know, I'm going to have a hip replacement. They're going to give me a new hip. So I won't be in this pain that I've been in for the last 2 or 3 years, you know. Getting married, like me, I'm getting married. That's amazing, you know, to the woman of my dreams, you know, and that's everything, you know, and having a family is, like, I love being a dad. You know, I love being a dad. It's just the most, you can't explain it. I can't explain it to you because you're a dad, but you can't, no one can explain it to you until it happens. And when it happens, you just have to live it. And it's just amazing. It's just magical, man. That's how my life is today, you know, and I can't forget where life was for me, you know.
So going from where life was, doing all those meetings, getting a sponsor, working 12-step recovery, to where you are now, what's the things that you had to do?
So I had to take on suggestions, first of all. I had to look at the 12 steps, which I didn't want to do. You know, I looked at them and they were quite scary for me. And they were quite difficult for me to look at myself. It was quite difficult to admit the things that I'm at fault, to realize that I'm the problem. But it was the best thing I've ever done in my life, going through them steps. And I did think, like, halfway through going through the steps, like, this is a completion, I'll do this, and then that's that done. And for me, it's not, you know, I have to keep going through them, keep looking at my defects, keep working on myself. helping other people, because ultimately if I'm helping someone else, then I'm looking at my steps again. And it's like, when I got sober, I remember hearing someone say that recovery comes before anything. And I remember the lady who said it, she said, come before my kids. And I remember at the time I was about 3 months sober, and I thought, how selfish is that? You can't say that. Today, and I've said this for a little while now, the most important thing to me is that I stay sober before anything. Before my daughter, before my partner, before anyone. I have to stay sober. But if I stay sober just for today, I have an amazing life, and I can keep that life. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, and it sounds simple, doesn't it? It sounds simple when you sit there and see it, but it requires a lot of work, doesn't it?
It requires work. It requires action. It's not acting out, which I do from time to time. I'm not a saint. I don't claim to be. I've messed up numerous times since I've been sober. And I'm not proud of that, but I own it today. Own it. I try not to do it again. I was just saying before, it's like one of my biggest things is anger. It's a defect that arose, when I was going through the steps, and it arose during my recovery, but I can recognize it today. And I try and stay away from it because I know where it goes. Like I know where it goes if I pick up a drink or take a drug. I know where it goes today. So I try and stay away from it.
How do you manage that? So what's and you don't have to tell us like the signs and symptoms potentially of anger appearing in your life, but if you see them signs and symptoms, how do you deal with anger? What's some of the coping strategies you might use to deal with that?
For me, anger is to walk away. I had a situation in work, ironically, about 2 months ago, and anger arose, not with me, with someone else, and I walked away. It probably could have gone one or two ways, but I walked away because that's best for me, and that is a new thing for me, because I normally jump on it. You shout, I'll shout. You swear, I'll share. You bang something, I'll bang something, and that doesn't work, So I walked away. I walked away from it, and that's what worked for me. Or ring someone. That's what works for me.
Yeah, and I think you've mentioned your sponsor and your friendship groups you've got now and stuff. So one of the things I always talk about with 12-step recovery is I don't go to 12-step meetings anymore. I know you do. I don't go to 12-step meetings anymore, but I've got so many friends from 12-step meetings that actually I can ring them at any point, any time, any day, and I can have a meeting with them.
Yeah.
Because it's just two people talking. And I firmly believe that 12-step recovery give me that friendship group and support network. What's your friendship group and support network like now, 6.5 years?
Yeah.
On in recovery?
Yeah.
Compared to where you were on day one?
I think for me, it's quite funny. I had my stag do last week, and there was like 10 of us out for it, and I was having this conversation with a few of the guys, like when I first got sober, I wanted to be everyone's friend. I wanted everyone's number, and I wanted to go to every meeting that everyone was at, and we're all big pally. And I think you find your niche within like whatever fellowship you're in. I have a group of men around me today, and women, but mainly men, who I'm in daily contact with. And I text probably every morning, and I connect with them. And when I'm having a shit day, I tell them I'm having a shit day. When they're going through a rough time, vice versa. But I have people I trust 100% today, and trust was massive for me. I found trust in a sponsor. My first sponsor was trust to me because I told him everything about my life. That was massive to me.
How long did that take you before you were able to trust somebody else?
So for me, honesty was the biggest thing. So when I first got sober, it says honesty in a lot of the literature, rigorous honesty, and I'd never been honest for most of my life. So that's what I latched onto. I can be honest here. I was honest with my first sponsor pretty much straight away. Just started telling him like my secrets. But I think the real honesty came from when I did step 4, which is an inventory of yourself. And I told him everything, and we built up that friendship. And I've never told another human being some of the things I told him, and he told me some things about him, and I've never repeated that. And that's what builds that trust.
So that was the trust that you built in someone else. How long did it take to build trust in yourself?
So that's a very difficult question, Richie. I think that's a gradual thing for me. It's a gradual thing. I remember. I think like the importance of those monthly chips that I talked about. When I got to a year sober, and I went to a meeting to celebrate my year sober. Back then, it was very egotistical. Like, I'm a year. This is me. I'm a year. Today, it's not me. Today it's Alcoholics Anonymous. I have to give my recovery to. It's not me. I just turn up. I don't drink, don't use, just for today. But the most important thing to me was, the honesty. I cried at my first meeting. Sorry, at my year birthday. Yeah. I just cried. It was just pure emotion that I was a year sober. And I have no problem with crying today. I'm an emotional guy, I show my emotions today. I get vulnerable. I tell people where I'm at. This is like sitting here now with you. This is great. I feel very relaxed. And that's not to say I walk out of here and something happens, or so I get a phone call, or, and that's when my recovery comes to show. That's when I've got to rely on what I've got, not here telling you how great I am. It's not that for me,
Yeah, it's when something comes along, bites you on the arse, isn't it? How are you then going to show up? How are you then going to do the right thing?
Yeah.
We talk about do the next right thing. And that's easy when it's all plain sailing and hunky-dory and life's great and get married. Something comes along and bites you on the arse.
Yeah.
What's the tools in your toolbox to manage that?
So for me today, it's been this way for a while. It's like people say, go to a meeting. Like I still go to meetings, but I don't have to go to meetings. But I love going to meetings. I go to meetings. I try and go to 2 to 3 meetings a week. I have a sponsor that I can call, and I have some really good friends in recovery that I can call at any time, and that's what I do. I ring someone. Yeah. Which I never used to do. Ring someone was so alien to me. Like, give you your number, and they say pick up the phone before you pick up a drink. It's such a weird thing to say, but I get it today.
Yeah, and it's simple, isn't it? It is simple, but actually, in that moment, it's not easy, is it?
No, it's not.
And I think you've got to practice it when things are going all right to be able to do it when things aren't, or shit hits the fan, so to speak. And I think that's what I've seen in you is you did put yourself out there, like, everywhere. Like, Alcoholics Anonymous, anywhere I went, I seen Nathan. And that was great. And I seen that. And then I started to see Nathan go through this little change of, like, actually, I don't need to be everywhere. I need to be where I need to be. And I think that's what you find, isn't it, through the journey of recovery, is going, actually, I find me tribe. You mentioned I found me tribe. I've now got me support network. I've now got a really good group of friends. I've got my sponsor. I can turn up at any meeting at any time. I know that's there for us, but I don't need to be in 260 meetings.
No, I think
anymore.
Like you hear all the time, it's a bridge to normal living, and that's a great thing to say. But if you don't know what normal living is, it's a kind of a pointless thing to say. Like, I didn't know what normal living was. Normal living for me was drinking, drugging, getting a job, losing a job, police cell, overdose. That was normal living to me. But it is a bridge to normal living. I have a very different life today, Richie. Life's busy. Life's really busy. But I have to give it back to AA, the reason that I'm here now with you, clean and sober. But it's just for today, That, for me, that was the most magical thing. People say, keep coming back. It's just for today. And you kind of feel it saying, oh, fuck off, just for today. But it is just for today. And once you can fathom that it is just for today, that, I don't have to do everything. I just have to today. That's it.
It is. It's all you've got, isn't it?
That's all I've got.
It's all you've got. I love the journey. I love where you've got to. Honestly, I log onto social media sometimes and see pictures of you and your family and your fiancée, and like, I remember them early days, even when you got together with your fiancée, I was around in the rooms, and that was quite a magical moment to see somebody who'd put that work in and got themselves to that point to then move on and go and start building a new life, didn't you? And I think that's what started happening. You moved away from obsession to drink and use drugs and started going, there is a future out there for me. And I think that was so like beautiful thing to see. And I think we see that a lot in recovery. It's not always the case though, is it?
No, it's not. And you know, the suggestions are there for a reason. You know, don't get into a relationship in early recovery. You know, it's not suggested. And we did. You know, I can see today why they say don't get into a relationship in early recovery. You know, you've got two people who are both in recovery, but like, we don't sponsor each other. You know, she has her sponsor and I have my sponsor. You know, she goes to her meetings and I go to my meetings. You know, like, I think the early days we went to the same meetings, and then we discovered that we'll probably go to separate meetings, and we have separate friend groups. But like I found love. You know, I've got to say it. I've got to throw that word in. It's so important to me. I didn't know what love was, and that's what I have. People get bored, probably sick to their teeth, of me posting love, but I'd never felt love before. Like I'm in love today.
That's just, and to be able to sit there and say that's one thing, to be able to post it's another thing, but it's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like, this is me and you talking, two guys who both been in active addiction, who probably at one point had a bit of a chip on our shoulder, had ego.
Yeah.
And now we're sitting talking about having that loving feeling.
Yeah.
Something being beautiful. Like, honestly, if Richie 15 years ago had been able to look into the future and hear that, it'd be like, who the fuck's that?
No,
and do you know what it is?
100%.
Here, and I'm proud that we can do this.
100%. Like my ego, even when I got sober, you know, I would constantly talk about the Rolling Stones and touring with this band and doing this in this hotel, and apart from this this conversation today, I haven't spoke about that for a few years because that's not me. It's not Nathan today. You know, I'm a completely different person than I was what I am then. But you know, like now, I talk about love. I use the word beautiful, use the word lush. And like you know, the old Nathan would look at me and go, pathetic, you know. But it's not pathetic, it's real. I found love, you know. I know what love is today. I know what love isn't today. But I can love myself today. That was another thing that I remember, you know, it's my sponsor now. He said that. He wasn't my sponsor then, but he said that then. He was like, you know, you've got to learn to love yourself. And I thought, that's mental. But you got to learn to love yourself. I love Nathan today. I don't like Nathan all the time, you know. Like I said, I mess up regularly, but right now, right here, I love Nathan. And if I can love Nathan, I can love other people.
Yeah, and I think that's it, so important that I love Nathan, I can love other people. Like, it's internal job, isn't it? You've got to go inwards before we can start putting it out there.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer in that. And what I see a lot of people in early recovery, especially from gambling, and it does happen in all recovery, but because I work in gambling harm and gambling addiction, then I see more people in that space. They always want to look for the external thing to stop them from gambling.
Yeah.
They always want to look for the external validation from somebody else. They always want to look for the external blocker to stop them from gambling. And it's not until you start looking inwards, looking in the mirror and seeing, what do I need to do? What work do I need to do? Until that moment, you don't really see the change. You just see people abstaining. You just see people not drinking. And I think in Alcoholics Anonymous, we call that a dry drunk, don't we?
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's important that you mention being able to love yourself. And once you start looking inwards and start showing self-compassion, self-love, all them other things start to change as well, isn't it? And I always say, like, I'll always strive to be better, but that doesn't mean I'm not happy with where I am. First, before I could get better, I had to get happy with where I was.
Yeah.
And once I got happy with that, I had better awareness of who Richie was. And once you create awareness of yourself, you can go, actually, I can improve that. I can improve that. I can do a bit of work here. I actually love who I am today, but if I just put a bit of time and effort into this, I can move forward in that area of my life. I can move forward in this area of my life. And I think for me, the term recovery capital is something that's banded about in recovery and in this sort of addiction world, but a lot of people don't know what it means. And I honestly just like to sum it up as being a better version of Richie.
Yeah.
How does Nathan be a better version of Nathan, day in, day out now?
For me, like I love what you said there. You know, like the old Nathan and this Nathan today are two completely different people, but they're the same person. Like, it's a good question. I could never have imagined the life I have today, ever. Never imagined it. You know, the life I have today, and I touched on it before, but it's how do I be a better person? I have to be honest. I have to be willing to change. I have to be forever teachable. My first sponsor said that to me, and at the time when he said it, I thought, no, not bad. But I get it now. Like, I've got to always be teachable. I've got to always be able to learn. I've got to love myself. I've got to understand people. I've got to love other people. I've got to be tolerant of other people. These are all the things that, you know, I don't want to be, but I have to be, you know. I don't, you know, I always say, you know, I wish everyone well. Don't necessarily like everyone. That's the truth, you know. That's my truth. This is just a journey, isn't it? You know, like, I'm not the finished article, you know. I've got a long way to go, you know, but I'm willing to do it. You know, I'm willing to put my recovery before anything.
Yeah. When you say that, like, the saying that goes in my head, or the thing that it resonates with me, is like, the more I learn about myself, the more work I realize I've got to do.
Yeah.
I love that. That would scare some people, you know, but actually I can sit in that, and I can, because for me, that means I've got more awareness of who I am, what I'm doing, you know, where my life's heading, all of them sorts of things. But actually what it actually also does is go, fucking hell, still got loads of work to do here. And I'm not scared of that anymore.
Yeah.
I can lean into that. I can actually embrace it and be okay with it, and know that sometimes life's difficult, sometimes life's shit.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that as well, because I can get through it, and I can get through it without the things that I used to have to use to get through it.
Yeah.
Today I can sit in discomfort. Today I can sit in a bit of pain. But I know if I do nothing, it'll change, and I'll be okay. And I'll move on. And I think that's the joy of recovery for me, is just knowing that I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know, and if I'm not, I'm not. And I can't do nothing about it anyway. Like,
Yeah.
and that's the reality of it. Tell us what's next for Nathan. I know wedding's coming up, but what is there a plan? Is there a goal? Is there something that you're working towards now?
To be honest, there's always dreams and hopes, isn't there?
Yeah.
For me, for us as a family unit, you know, there is the wedding. We're gonna get married. It's gonna be a beautiful day, and then it's my operation. You know, I want to get that out of the way. You know, and embrace it for what it is. There will be nerves, Richie. You know, I'm not gonna lie. And I think when I first found out, I was very nervous. But you know, like that. For me, it's the joy of like social media. You know, I got vulnerable and I shared it, because that's what I've learned to do. You know, that when something doesn't feel right, to share it. So I shared it on Facebook. I put a post up, which I am, you know, very grateful. NHS, and I am very grateful. But ultimately, behind that post, there was I don't want to say this, but I have to say it. A friend of mine reached out from Australia, and he had the operation in January, and he was telling me about his operation. It kind of reassured me. My mother-in-law's just had hers done, and she's bounced back. She's like a changed woman, and that gives me hope. And it's that, isn't it? It's to have dreams and hopes. Obviously, I've got dreams and hopes. You know, it's a day at a time. You know, to say all the things we want to do next year. Like, we want to go on holiday. We're going to have a honeymoon. We're going to go back to Ibiza, where we went on holiday with Summer and Catherine, and do all that. But of course, there's hopes. There's I want to talk about my little daughter. You know, that's my hopes. That's my dreams. You know, that I get to see her grow up. You know, that I get to try and be a good dad. You know, I'm not the best dad in the world, but I try my hardest. You know, and I learn how to be a dad through other people, through the good things, through the bad things. I love being a dad. You know, and you can't plan too much, can you?
Yeah, and the reason I ask that is because I know a big believer in AA, big believer in 12-step recovery, still go all the time, all them things that you've shared one day at a time. I think that's all great, but actually we're allowed hopes, we're allowed dreams, we're allowed to look to the future and go, I want a bit of that, you know. So, and I think we need that in life. I think we need to have that drive and that vision to just go, I want that holiday, I want to see my daughter grow up, I want the wedding, I want the honeymoon. It doesn't mean anything other than actually I've started to become Nathan, real Nathan, authentic Nathan who is allowed to do that. Because in early recovery, we were told never look past the day, never look past the day. And I think it's important that actually it's okay to look past the day. I get what you're saying. It's just for today. I've already got today. But if we can't see some of them things that we're aiming for, we'll never get them either, do we?
No, 100%. I think the dreams would lie, for me, would always lie where it's always been. Have my own place, you know, have my own restaurant, run my own restaurant. You know, they were dreams that I had during my addiction. I wanted my own place. Then I got sober, thought I'd never cook again. Then I started cooking again. And now I'm cooking again. And I've been cooking for a few years. The dream's always there to have my own place.
Is the passion still there for it?
I love my job. Like, I love my job. You know, the place where I work now, which is slightly ironic because it's a brewery and it's got a restaurant attached to it, and I'm in recovery. Everyone knows I'm in recovery. I'm very open. When I got the job there, I told the owner that I'm in recovery and I need set days off, and I go to meetings, and it's worked. You know, I get joy from working with the team I have underneath me. You know, we're one team. You know, I run the kitchen. I'm not the best chef in the world, but I'm pretty good. That's the truth. You know, I know how to cook an onion, you know. I get joy today from training people and teaching people. You know, when I started cooking professionally when I was 18, I knew nothing. I think my first job, I remember the guy's name, I won't say it, but he asked me, can I make a hollandaise sauce? And I said, no. And this is before Google. You know, you couldn't Google it back then. And he taught me how to make a hollandaise sauce when I was 18. And today I like teaching people to make a hollandaise sauce. Most of the lads in my kitchen can now make a hollandaise sauce, and I get massive satisfaction from that. You know, they can bake cakes, and I can teach people. I teach them some knowledge. You know, get that carrot cake. You know, but it's that, isn't it? You know, handing it over. You know, handing it back to people.
Yeah, and for me, what's the point in keeping it?
Yeah,
you know, and if you keep it, then it's not worth having anyway.
No, 100%. And that's recovery, Richie. You know, for me, that's recovery. You know, like people ask me to sponsor them, and you know, I think the first time felt a bit weird, someone asking me, but I love helping people. That's not egotistical. I love helping people. Can't keep them sober, but I can help them.
Does that help you?
Of course, it helps me. I wouldn't do it if it didn't help me. That's a selfish thing to say, but it's true. You know, I sponsor people because it helps me stay sober.
And a lot of people say it's selfish. I don't think it's selfish. I think it's just honest. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about, isn't it? It's about how do I give something so I get something else back in return. And if you give it out, you probably get it back tenfold anyway, in different ways, loads of different ways, you know.
100%.
One of my big values, and I talk about my values all the time, you know, help other people, help yourself. You know, it used to be help other people.
Yeah.
Until my coach at the time called us out on it. And he was like, bullshit. You don't just help other people. You help other people because you get something back from it.
Yeah.
You know, and actually, if I trace all the way back to my active addiction, I used because I got something out of it. That was the thing. It eased the pain. It eased the discomfort that I found myself in at that time. So it served us for that purpose. It then got to a point where it wasn't serving us and it was causing more harm than any good. And I'd done something about it. But it's the same now. You know, helping other people serves me because it helps me stay on, you know, top of my recovery and on top of who I am, and allows us just to be Richie now. And I think that's the difference, you know, is Richie can just be Richie. And if you didn't like it, it's not my problem.
And that's it, isn't it? You know, I want to be everyone's friend. And then you, for me, I went through a stage of, you know, I want everyone to like me. And then I went through a stage of, I don't care if you don't like me, but I really do. I do care if you don't like me. And today I'm just me. I try and be me. You know, authentic, just Nathan, you know, just me. can't always be me, you know. I have to sometimes latch on to a different persona in different areas, you know. If I'm at work, I have to be the chef, Nathan, which is like a bit more strict there and a bit more bossy or whatever. But I think the more I'm just me, the better it is for me, you know.
Yeah. Brilliant. I love it. Nathan, thank you very much for giving up your time. And I'm sure so many people will take something from this. So thanks for sharing your journey. And yeah, best of luck for the wedding and the operation. And yeah, look forward to seeing how it goes.
Thank you, Richie.
Thanks for listening to the Recovery Toolkit podcast. If you took something positive from it, then why not subscribe? If you or somebody you know has been suffering gambling-related harm, why not head over to our website where you can join our community? The link is in the show notes.